Hi guys, welcome to the online Scores Back seminar for Laguna Beach High School. My name is Alan Polito. I'm the Director of Private Tutoring for the Princeton Review, and my email address is listed on this first slide. Feel free to contact me if you guys have any questions after watching this video. You're also welcome to set up either a phone or local Starbucks consultation or an office meeting with myself or one of my colleagues if you have any further questions about your testing, your college plans, and any other questions that you might have moving forward. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. So here's what I am going to discuss in this recording. First of all are the scores that you guys should have received from the Laguna Beach High testing from a couple of weeks ago. We will then move on to the SAT versus the ACT, and finally I will discuss the testing timeline. Let's go ahead and get started. So on this slide, I'm going to open up by discussing the SAT score report. Please bear in mind that there were 3 different test types administered at Laguna Beach that day. There was the SAT, there was the ACT, and there was the PRA, which is the Princeton Review Assessment, a combination SAT-ACT exam. If you took the combination PRA test, you need to pay attention when I'm talking about both the SAT and the ACT. So any information I'm going to discuss starting with this first slide is going to affect you. So please make sure you are paying attention to that information. So for the SAT, first of all, there are 3 major sections that are tested on this exam. They're called math, reading, and writing. There's also a couple of subsections called grammar and essay for the SAT. But when you're talking about what you received on the SAT or the scores that you have, typically you're just talking about the math, reading, and the writing sections. If you're looking at the very first page of your score report, you want to look at the top right-hand side because that's where your scores are listed. And R stands for reading, M is math, W is writing, G is grammar, and E is essay. For the first 3 sections, math, for the reading, math, and the writing, each of those is a 3-digit score. The minimum is 200 points, and the maximum is 800 points. The average score for each of those 3 sections is around 500 points for a high school junior. Obviously, if you're a sophomore or a freshman who took this test and you're grazing or beating 500 points, you're scoring at least above average for your grade level. If you're a junior right now, it is what it is. 500 is the national average for a high school junior. The grammar is scored from a minimum of 20 points to a maximum of 80 points, and the average score is 50 for a high school junior. So you'll notice for this particular example, this student scored 400 in the reading, 390 in the math, 470 in the writing, and then a 47 in the grammar, right around average or close to it. And finally, the E for the essay score is from a minimum of 2 points to a maximum of 12 points. And the average score in the essay is around 7 points for a high school junior. And so this student scored a 4, which is below average versus the 7 that I just mentioned. The grammar and the essay score are used to calculate your 3-digit writing score. So in my example on this slide, the 470 that the student achieved was a result of getting a 47 on the grammar and a 4 on the essay. You do not add the grammar and the essay scores to your total SAT score. So if somebody asks you what you got on your SAT, you would basically respond with the total, the sum of the reading, the math, and the writing put together. Bear in mind, guys, that for college admissions, some colleges do not look at all the scores. For example, if you're applying to a state school, especially in California, state schools currently do not look at the SAT writing section. So for this student, if she were applying to San Diego State, Cal State Fullerton, or Cal Poly Pomona, those schools would only look at her reading score of 400 and her math score of 390. That writing score would not be counted. But if she were to apply to a university such as one of the UCs or a private school such as USC or an Ivy League school such as Harvard, then they would count all 3 sections. So once again, the reading, the math, and the writing are range from 200 to 800 points, and the grammar is from 20 to 80 points, and the essay is from 2 through 12 points. For the ACT, and again, this is a reminder that if you took the combination test, you should continue to be paying attention. Okay? The ACT consists of more sections. Those sections are called the English, Math, Reading, and Science. The composite is your overall ACT score, which is the average of those 4 sections. It also has an optional writing or essay section. We did not give it as an optional section in this testing. Everybody who sat there for the ACT basically had to take that writing section as well. So if you take a look at the top right-hand side of your score report for the ACT, you'll notice these abbreviations and the scores accordingly. Okay, so the C is for composite, E is for English, M for math, reading, science, and then the optional writing. Each of these sections is from a minimum of 1 to 36 points, and the optional writing section is from 2 through 12 points. For the English, Math, Reading, and Science from 1 to 36, the average score is approximately 21 points for a high school junior, and for the writing section, the average score is once again a 7 for a high school junior. Okay, so you just kind of use those numbers accordingly and study them depending on your grade level. And by the way, if you're scoring right around average for either the ACT, which is around 21 points, or for the SAT, which is around 500 per section, that's competitive for many of what we would call the state schools or state colleges. And but if you're trying to get into the universities or UCs, on the SAT, you want to try to get at least into the 600 per section range, and on the ACT, that's the mid to high 20s. If you are applying to the most competitive schools in the country, you're going to want to try to break into the 30, 31, or higher range for the ACT, and on the SAT, it's 700 points per section. So just some sort of college information that I want to share with you guys there. Okay, and again, for the ACT, as we're looking at this particular slide, the composite is your overall score. So for this student on this example, if somebody were to ask her, what did you get on the ACT, she would say, I got a 19 out of a 36. That's the composite, which is calculated by taking the average of those 4 sections. Now, if you took the PRA, here's an example, and I actually prefer if you focus on the middle left-hand side of your score report. It's a little bit confusing to take a look at on the top right because some of the letters don't necessarily coincide with the actual acronym, so I want to avoid that confusion. So if you took the combination PRA test, please focus on the left-hand side, the middle left-hand side, and you can see that the breakdown of your scores is relisted there, and in fact there's no abbreviation either, so it's much easier to look at. So for this particular student, you can notice that the ACT scores are listed first. So for the ACT, we have ACT English, which he scored a 20 on, the ACT Math, in which he scored a 22 on, and then ACT Reading, which is 26, ACT Science, which is also 26, and finally the 5th number, just ACT, is the composite, so this student scored a 24. The next 3 scores are the SAT scores. So SAT Math is 480, SAT Reading is 440 for this student again, and SAT Writing is 530. The final score is called the Essay, which is the same scoring grid for either test type, 2 through 12, and this student scored a 7. Again, as a reminder, the ACT scores are each from 1 to 36, 21 being the average. The SAT scores are each from 200 to 800 points, 500 being the average. And the essay score is from 2 through 12, with 7 being the average. Okay? And then regardless of which test type you took, so pay no attention to the fact that it says ACT English here. This is applicable to all of you who took this test. This is the most helpful part because here is where you can study your performance for each individual problem. So when you take a look at the very first column, the blue numbers moving from top to bottom, the first column indicates the number of the problem. So on the very left-hand side, numbers 1 on the very top and number 17 on the very bottom, those are the numbers of each problem. And of course, they continue on from 18 to 34 in the middle and 35 to 50 towards the right. The second column under the letter A stands for answer, and that indicates the correct answer. So looking at this slide, problem number 1, the correct answer was D, as in David. And the most important part is the third column under the letter Y, which is you or your response. So if you see a plus sign, that means you got it correct. So again, for problem number 1, the correct answer was D, as in David. This student has a plus sign in the third column. That means she got it correct. She also got number 2 correct because there's a plus sign there, but she made a mistake for problem number 3. This student put down the letter D as in David for problem number 3, but the correct answer was B as in boy. And although it's not shown on this slide, if you see a dash or a minus sign in the Y column, the third column, that means you left it blank. You decided to skip that problem. The fourth column under the letter C stands for the category of the question. That's really not as helpful to you guys in this format, and that's something that the score report in the computer basically calculated for you in other parts of the score report. So you guys will notice bar graphs on certain parts of the score report, and it will show you your performance on the subsections. It actually gives you ratios for right, wrong, and blank. So you might see something that says geometry, and to the right of that description geometry, you might say 5 right, 10 wrong, 2 blank. So that tells you your performance on those subtopics. Now here is what we call a concordance chart, just a fancy term for comparison, and this is something that's been officially released by the ACT test writers themselves. And effectively what it does is it allows you to compare your SAT and ACT scores, which is especially valuable for those of you who took the combination PRA exam. So if you look at the very first column on the left, it says ACT composite score, starting with the number 36 at the very top and number 11 on the very bottom. The second column in the, with the sort of the grayed out color to it is the combined or total SAT score when you add reading, math, and writing together. So here's how you would use this if you took the combination test. So let's pretend you got an average score of 21 on your ACT composite. This is just an example. So I would locate 21, which is towards sort of the middle part of this section of this slide. And so I see 21, and to the right of it, I see that it converts to 1470, 1,470. So basically, a 21 on the composite for the ACT is approximately around 1470 for the SAT. What you would then do is basically actually add up your SAT score on your PRA score report and see if that's higher or lower versus that 1470. And that is how you would determine which test you might be better at. Bear in mind, guys, that if you're within about 60 to 80 points of the SAT versus the ACT, you're still sort of mathematically equal between the two. And sometimes you can even stretch that idea to around 100 points difference between the two. So to be considered a significant difference and a significant strength or weakness, there must be more than a 100-point difference between your results. For many of you, you will score fairly equally between the two. And when that happens, you usually want to defer to the SAT, S as in Sam, because the SAT is still the easier test to improve because it's more technique-based. It has less reading involved, which is a harder skill to improve. And finally, the SAT score is a total of reading, math, and writing put together, so mathematically it's easier to improve. The ACT is a composite score, which is an average of 4 sections, and an average in math is much harder to improve. Okay? As promised, I'm also going to discuss a few things about the SAT versus the ACT, so that's what this slide is for. The first thing that I want you guys to know, if you forget everything else, is that all colleges accept either test type. You must try to remember this because you will always hear different information about that, and there are a lot of rumors out there regarding what colleges want about SAT versus ACT. The truth is all colleges accept either test, so whichever one you are better at is the one that you should focus on and turn into the schools. Some of you are naturally better at one test over the other. And the only way to truly determine which one you might be better at is to take practice exams. So to all of you who took this practice test, regardless of which type, you've taken a step in the right direction. Remember that if you've taken other practice tests as well, you can use those and all that information to compare and determine which test might be better for you. You are welcome to contact us if you're not sure how to do that. You are certainly allowed to take both tests or just one of them depending on how your testing skills compare to one another. Especially in Orange County, there are plenty of students who decide to study for and prepare for both. But if you're somebody who is pressed for time or just not as comfortable with testing and you don't want to take as many of these exams as possible, then certainly you can decide to just focus on one test versus the other. Okay. There is something called test optional colleges, and test optional colleges are basically schools that have declared that they do not use or will not use SAT and ACT scores as part of their application process. And that's a growing number, and the website you might want to go to is called fairtest.org, F-A-I-R test.org. And so there are hundreds of different schools out there that have had that requirement, that testing requirement removed. They do have different policies. Some of them will outright tell you that they do not accept a test score, so don't even try to send them. Others will call them optional, so if you feel like it helps add to your resume and your application, go ahead and send scores in. And for others, it's more of a minimum GPA requirement. If you exceed a certain level of GPA, they'll tell you you probably don't need to send in test scores. Of course, the best way to determine which test is better for you is to use practice tests. And those of you who participated in this event, of course, are doing just that. And for the testing timeline, okay, so if they offer the plan at your school, go ahead and take that sophomore year. The plan is basically the practice ACT, and that's just simply what they call it, the plan. And the PSAT is something that you can take sophomore year as well, but usually you just take it junior year. And junior year is the only time you can qualify for national merit for the PSAT if you score somewhere in the top 1% of the country. So it's a fairly difficult award to get into, but if you're able to qualify, it's something that looks nice on your college application, and it can lead to more financial aid and scholarships for you. Okay, so both the plan and the PSAT that I've just shown you here are practice tests. They do not count towards your college admissions. The tests that you guys just took at Laguna Beach High School via Princeton Review were also practice tests, and those do not count for your official record. And so when do you take your official SAT or ACT? It would be during your junior year. Usually people will cut it up into either the first half or the second half of junior year, and that becomes a personal choice, especially depending on your math level and when you believe you are ready to take the exam. So those of you who are a bit more aggressive and probably a bit more advanced in your math and English classes, you'll probably take your test in the fall of junior year. For those of you who have to wait a little bit longer or probably didn't get a chance to prepare, you would wait until the spring of your junior year as well. Senior year should be used for backup test dates. And so for many colleges, they will accept tests well into at least a couple of months into your senior year, and so you'll still have a chance in the fall when you're applying to schools. And finally, something some of you may not be aware of, there is a difference between testing and application deadlines. What that basically means is that you can usually turn in a college application online earlier than the actual testing deadline. So for example, if you apply to the UCs, let's say UC Irvine, the application deadline for UC Irvine is the last day of November. But you can still take an official SAT or ACT in the month of December and still catch that up to your application. And that's perfectly allowed. And so you will have different policies and deadlines per college, so make sure you look those up. And if you need more help, certainly the Princeton Review is a leader in SAT and ACT preparation, and we have every kind of methodology you could possibly imagine. We have our most popular options are group sessions or private tutoring, which takes place at your house one-on-one. Regardless of what your testing goals happen to be, we can help you reach those goals. So our website is princetonreview.com, and our local office number in Irvine is listed right there, 949-265-0401. And once again, you are, of course, welcome to contact me, and we can set up some sort of consultation, and we can talk to you guys specifically about your plans. Okay? Thank you very much, guys, and I hope you learned something from this slideshow and this seminar. Have a good day.